Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. My name is Jess and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information that I want to cover with you. All right, let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. So if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Now, keep in mind that if you do have any technical issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on today, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's EcoCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over a live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, if we don't get to your question during the live webinar today, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us will be following up after we wrap. All right, next up, there's going to be lots of cool aha moments on the EcoCast today. And if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's EcoCast will be automatically added to your post. All right, our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some awesome resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection, solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. Now, if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout today's EcoCast. I'm going to tell you a bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be here live in attendance at the EcoCast in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all of you after we wrap. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you don't know what those full T's and C's are, that's fine. We've got the full thing for you. Just head on over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we actually have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. So in today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all questions asked after we wrap the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and you would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we'll get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the EcoCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going, so let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and on LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content and resources right after we wrap the EcoCast today, be sure to subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and, hey, grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or a coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in your handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. And both you and your coworker or friend could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend because, it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your handouts tab, fill out a quick application, and the Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should probably be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you get to choose to join in, like surveys, test runs, new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you'll learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker on your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and as I said, they are completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in that handouts tab as well. All right, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get going.
Thanks so much, Jess. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining today's EcoCast by Actual Tech Media. The topic is supercharging, optimizing, and managing an on-premises data center. Today's event is brought to you in partnership thanks to our friends at Rubrik. We've got a great event lined up for you here today. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'm joined by fellow moderators who you already met, Jess Steinbach, Scott Becker, and Mr. Keith Ward. We're here to make this a great event for you and lead today's discussions, lead your Q&A with our expert presenters, and maybe announce some of these prizes. We'll be announcing the winners of our 3 Amazon $300 gift cards at the end of today's webinar. You must be live in attendance, of course, to qualify, and the prize terms and conditions can be found right there in your handouts tab, as Jess mentioned. All right, without further ado, I'm excited now to bring in today's expert keynote presenter. Welcome to Joey D'Antonio, VMware vExpert and Microsoft Data Platform MVP. Joey, it's great to have you back on. Take it away.
Thanks for the introduction, and welcome to Supercharging, Optimizing, and Managing an On-Premises Data Center. I'm Joey D'Antoni. I'm Principal Consultant at Denny Cherry & Associates, and I'm a longtime Microsoft Data Platform MVP, as well as a VMware vExpert. So I've got a great deal of knowledge and experience around both using the cloud and deploying on-prem solutions. So it's kind of interesting to me as we've evolved, we've really seen this kind of bifurcation of workloads, right? We see some customers that go all in on the cloud. We see some customers that commit to staying all in an on-premises environment. And a lot of those customers have different needs, and some of them make the right decisions for their organization. Some of them are chasing trends. But we've also seen in recent years a number of organizations pulling back workloads from the cloud. And that can be for any number of reasons. In some cases, it can be because the cost model doesn't work out for that particular type of workload. An example of this is things that are usage-based. I'll talk about something in particular on the next slide around bandwidth, but even like storage utilities that you pay to read and access data as opposed to just store it. If that data is frequently accessed, those costs can be much higher than storing that data in a traditional on-prem environment. The other aspect of this is performance. A lot of workloads that need to be super mission critical have closer access to hardware. We just don't have necessarily the same levels of performance that you can buy on-prem in the cloud. The cloud can deliver really good performance, but not the levels of performance you might need for your application. So let's kind of talk through some of the things here. The cloud can be the right solution for many organizations. The type of organizations that I really like to see go to the cloud are smaller organizations who maybe have, a rack or two of servers, and they maybe are running virtualization software, but they're completely overburdened. Like, they don't have, if a single host fails, their VM infrastructure is going to be completely over provisioned. They have all sorts of single points of failure in their infrastructure. Those organizations are going to see big gains in availability by going to the cloud. And typically, those are the kind of organizations that don't have infrastructure teams that can pay attention to the latest trends in data centers and stay on top of improving energy efficiencies and a lot of the things we're concerned about within given data centers. The other aspect of the cloud is that it can be very expensive for very demanding and consistent workloads. The story I mentioned when I had the last slide up that I wanted to talk about is downstream bandwidth. Somewhat famously, AWS has very cheap storage prices, but they also have very expensive downstream bandwidth charges. For example, the cost of downloading a 2 terabyte file from AWS is many times more than the monthly cost of storing that same file because you're paying for that downstream bandwidth. The other issue with that downstream bandwidth cost, and there are a number of factors like this in the cloud, is that it's a variable, unbounded cost. So for something like downloading a file or streaming video, if your business revolves around streaming video, it can cost on the order of hundreds of $1,000s or more a month, just in those downstream bandwidth costs. So in those sorts of scenarios where you're hitting something that's completely unbounded, it makes total sense to stay in an on-premises model. The other aspect is consistent demanding workloads. The cloud, over time, when it first started, the kind of storage latency and network latency situations were pretty terrible. But over time, they've evolved to be, I would say, respectable. You can get very good storage performance numbers. You can get pretty good bandwidth numbers. But it's still not the same as, say, having physical servers with either local direct attached, NVMe storage, or even, high bandwidth fiber channel connections to an all-flash SAN, where you're seeing like sub-millisecond read and write latency from your storage. For demanding applications like high-frequency trading, gambling, any of those super apps that, to be honest, make or break a lot of companies' financials, those sorts of apps make all the sense in the world to stay on-prem, because each millisecond of latency reduces the effectiveness of the app. I've worked with a customer, they're a gambling site, and within a single workload, we saw up to 13 million transactions per second on a single box. They were able to accomplish that, and they carefully picked the physical servers they wanted to buy. They carefully selected the processors and the memory to make sure they were the right speed. Those are all things that you can do in an on-prem world that you kind of can't do in the cloud. You get what's offered. And the latency will nearly always be higher, especially for storage. The storage performance is good, and there are some things with locally attached storage, but you just don't have the flexibility. And typically, the big thing is the bandwidth. And the cloud providers are making some improvements, but you also have, just network latency to get to the data center, depending on where you're located and what's in the cloud. And then finally, you have the virtualization tax. And this is something that, especially since Spectre and Meltdown, has been somewhat more prevalent, especially for types of workloads that do a lot of CPU context switching. It's where I tend to observe it the most. The virtualization tax, especially for servers that are using, and most of the cloud providers are doing this now, where you're getting hyper-threaded VMs as opposed to physical cores. You're going to see just better performance on physical hardware for those very demanding workloads. There are a lot of performance is probably the biggest reason we see customers stay on-prem, but I'll say that kind of ties back into both performance and cost, because the cost of overbuying for highly performant systems in the cloud just goes through the roof and outweighs what the customer can do in an on-premises world. So some reasons to stay on-premises. Mission critical systems that demand the highest levels of availability. This one's honestly a little bit of a wash. You're kind of shifting some risk here. The cloud providers, especially for their infrastructure as a service platforms, do tend to have very good availability. However, if they have an outage, it tends to be major. So for mission critical systems here, you're taking advantage and you're making the assumption that you're going to build in levels of high availability and disaster recovery to support the mission criticality of your application. So what I'm trying to say here is you're going to spend money on hardware and probably redundant data centers in order to meet those availability needs, because that's the way we deliver availability. But you can completely, do better than the cloud providers, especially compared to like some of the PaaS offerings where they tend to have more outages. Another example here is ERP systems. And I think a lot of people use the phrase ERP systems as a euphemism for SAP. SAP tends to be one of the more hardware demanding infrastructures in the world. I know strictly from the Microsoft Azure side, there have been several VM classes that have been introduced with more and more memory just to better support SAP HANA. And some of those are very expensive. Like there's a 416 core, 12 terabyte VM. I think you can buy a server like that for $100,000 to $150,000. That server in Azure would cost you, $100,000 a month. So it can be much more cost effective when you have those big giant workloads to keep those workloads on-prem. As I mentioned on point one, when cloud outages tend to be pretty rare, but when they happen, they're really bad. So you can be all down and you have no control and you have limited insight into what's going on. So you have a lower blast radius in the event of major cloud outages. Once again, this is really dependent on you building that availability into your data center. So having things like redundant data centers is really important. Otherwise, you're going to have just worse availability and you're having to manage your own servers. But that reduced blast radius is definitely a thing. Remember, you want to design to protect against weather events. You want to design to protect against server failure and just minimize those single points of failure and have a plan in the event all those things go wrong even at once. And then finally, for a better understanding and predictability of cost, the cloud providers have started to increase prices in recent years. It hasn't been necessarily the panacea that a lot of folks thought it was. It's never been cheaper to go to the cloud. And especially if your business demands a lot of hardware and a lot of scale, the more demand there is, the more cost effective it can be to stay in your own data center or data centers, because you have a better understanding and predictability of cost. We're going to talk a little bit about procurement on the next slide, but procurement's one of those areas that can really help you do this, especially if you're buying a lot of hardware. So modern data centers are very different than what I grew up with, where we had kind of every company had their own data center. They weren't necessarily that big. I was in some data centers that were, 3,000, 4,000 square feet. And now they tend to be much bigger, but they also are way more efficient. The other trend we see is lots of automation. And a lot of this has been driven by some of the tools we've picked up in using the cloud. Various software tools like Terraform that can automate on either physical hardware or automate even against virtualization solutions. The improvement around software-defined networking. These are all things that have helped us automate our data center and make it a more robust and automatic place. And I think that's something that we see pretty good benefits to. So whether you're deploying workloads or application, you have tools at your hands to not have to build things not have to go, as we like to joke, install Windows or Red Hat from a DVD in a physical server. Things should be automatic and deploy fast. Storage is something else that's changed a lot. So for the longest time, we saw some massive improvements in CPU performance. And now we're in an era where almost all of our storage is on all-flash SSDs. We may have capacity tiers that use spinning disk, but for the most part, we see really low storage latency and nearly endless volume. And that's one of the places the cloud providers have a little bit of an advantage. You have to manage that storage, and a lot of organizations will take advantage of the cloud for archival storage, where some regulatory agency says you have to store something for some period of time. You'll take advantage of the cloud storage because it can be cheaper. And yeah, let's face it, lots of organizations that are on-prem are going to be hybrid. And then finally, energy and efficiency are still big concerns. In Europe this year, we've seen a lot of rising energy costs. We have been improving the efficiency of data centers and using alternative power sources like solar and wind that can help with this. Also, there's a lot of research into alternative cooling strategies or running data centers slightly warmer than in the past to kind of try to mitigate some of those costs around power and energy. And those are things we keep in mind. Some other changes that are taking place, and this image is from a conference I attended last October called the OCP Global Summit. OCP is the Open Compute Project, which is an open source project around hardware. And some of the things that I really see that are changing over time, there's just more bandwidth, more and more bandwidth. So we see more and more bandwidth. And this ties into this kind of interesting concept called CXL, or Compute Express Link, that allows you to potentially disaggregate memory and compute. Right now, that's kind of like top of rack memory because of the bandwidth concerns. Because obviously, any trip outside of your main CPU board to memory is going to be orders of magnitude more expensive than what a normal memory call would be. It's very much still a work in progress, but because of if we can disaggregate memory from CPU, we can potentially increase our utilization and deliver a more utilized data center. And that really helps us with all the power metrics, and we eliminate fragmentation, and we just have a more efficient and optimized data center. Finally, let's talk about some key factors to the success here. You need to invest in both people and automation. You'd like to think that automation could replace some of your data center employees, but it's not really like that. You need to have good employees who can help you build automation, and kind of like in that Google site reliability engineering mindset where you continue to further automate and evolve, but kind of constantly over time. Something we really haven't talked about yet is security, but this is another thing that is kind of, in my eyes, critical. You want to ensure your security is as good as it can be. Your data center physical security, that's something that obviously is of kind of critical importance. The other aspect to think about is things like network segregation and systems and all the things that we hear always about ransomware attacks, unfortunately. But we want to protect against those things, and we have to assume breach, right? So you want to make sure those user systems and your servers are all on different networks and can only talk to each other as much as they need to, so that when you do have a breach, it doesn't take down your whole business. The third one, and this is something I see with a lot of my smaller customers that choose to stay on-prem, is to have enough redundancy in hardware and storage that you've eliminated single points of failure. If one piece of hardware going down takes down your entire infrastructure, you don't have many nines. You might be at like 2 nines at that point. So you want to take advantage. You want to spend more, and this is an example of where the costs come closer as you speak about cloud versus on-prem. Because if you have the redundancy you need to have to provide those levels of availability, you are going to be spending more in hardware. And then finally, I like to mention this because it's something I get to take advantage of working in larger organizations. Procure your hardware and software wisely. Particularly on the hardware side, we were able to, when I worked at Comcast, we were able to do reverse auctions to server vendors because we would buy like 1,000 servers at a time. And if you're buying that level of hardware, especially in a world where the cloud providers are so prevalent now, so the hardware vendors of the world are more receptive to negotiation. If you're buying lots of hardware, you can probably get better deals. Likewise with software, take advantage of your position and negotiate with those vendors and negotiate hard. And that's how you can really help those costs improve over time. With that, I'm going to hand it back and enjoy the rest of the sessions today.
All right, great presentation, Joey. Thank you so much for being on the EcoCast today. Really, really educational, informative content. I hope everyone was taking notes out there. We got a lot of great questions as well for Joey. Thank you so much for those. We'll be routing those to Joey to get back to as quickly as possible. I just brought up a slide that everyone should check out. We want to hear from you. We want to get your feedback on what upcoming events would you like to see in our 2024 calendar, and maybe even later this year. What's top of mind for you when it comes to all the topics you deal with on a day-to-day basis? Is it cloud, data protection, cybersecurity, AI? What is it? We want to hear from you. Drop your comments right there in the questions box. Just a quick post. Hey, I want to hear about this. I want to learn more about this. I see Jose said cybersecurity. Thank you, Jose. Lots of folks out there are commenting. All of the above, said Chris. Thank you. So what are your topics that you want to learn more about? We at Actual Tech Media want to create events based on those topics. So just drop them there in the questions box. And then one more way I want to hear from you quickly before I introduce you to our first presenter here in just a moment, and that is, what's your time frame for taking some sort of action on today's topic regarding supercharging, optimizing, and managing your on-premises data center? Maybe you want to add some new data protection or ransomware recovery services. What's your time frame for taking some sort of action on that? I'll leave this poll up here for 5 seconds. Give everyone a moment to respond. All right. Thank you for all those responses. It is now time to bring in today's first expert presenter on the EcoCast. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Rich Eicher, who is a sales engineer at Rubrik. Hey, Rich, it's great to have you on.
Hey, thanks, David. Thanks for having me this morning.
Absolutely. Take it away. Tell us about Rubrik and how you all are helping companies to supercharge their on-premises data centers.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for the kind introduction, and thanks for the good content we've had here so far. I'd like to introduce myself, Rich Eicher, and I would like to introduce you to Rubrik. Our mission is simple. Rubrik is here to secure your data so you can secure your business. All right. I'm going to jump into this. Let me go back one slide. Sorry, my slide is a little jumpy here. All right. Everybody has backup, but that doesn't really mean that you've got cyber resilience. We all know that when organizations are faced with a cyber attack, the first thing they do is they go to their backups for recovery. But yet we're seeing, time and time again that these recoveries can take multiple weeks with the costs running into the millions. We really have a key fundamental question and challenge that we're trying to solve here at Rubrik. And quite frankly, if you can't answer this today, it's exactly why we're having this conversation. If you can answer the question, you're probably already a customer of Rubrik. But that answer is pretty straightforward. Can you recover from a cyber attack within 24 hours? Why have we really picked 24 hours as a kind of a timeline that is sensitive? Because a lot of stuff is happening in the first 24 hours. By 24 hours into it, the entire business knows you're down. There's starting to be very high visibility across your organization, probably to your partners and customers as well. The impact is growing quickly, and it's only going to get larger. And quite frankly, now the odds of getting attention from the local or national news media is increasing every single hour. So the clock is ticking, most definitely. We all know that organizations have layers of security, perimeter security, network, endpoint, application security, IDS, IPS, but we know one thing: the bad actors are still getting through. Regardless of how diligent we are with patching, security precautions, these threat actors are oftentimes using zero-day exploits, which really has no way to defend against at this point. With all of the complexity that we're bringing to the table, remote workers, VPNs, VDI, EDR, endpoint protection, all of these services during attack are oftentimes disabled. We have to remember that the core tools that you rely on for your investigation and analysis are oftentimes taken out when these attacks take place. So really, when all else fails, we know that we have to rely on the backup and disaster recovery systems. But the problem is, these systems were never designed to withstand these attacks when hostile threat actors are inside your perimeter. And they certainly weren't designed to give you any semblance of intelligence to help you recover. So these attackers come in, they can remove your ability to recover. They rely on you not having the visibility to know what to recover. They strike and they demand ransom. This is the fundamental problem that we're trying to solve. We start by, you can see they get through quite easily. It happens again and again. This is the fundamental problem we're trying to solve. We're going to give you a purpose-built solution that replaces your existing backup and disaster recovery technologies with a solution that was built and intended for true cyber resilience. Yes, we're going to have to replace your backup and disaster recovery solution, at least the backup component. And yes, we check all the boxes and protect all the workloads that you need to protect. But the real reason we're doing this is to give you the ability to have the capabilities and tools required to be truly cyber resilient. So you know that you can answer this question in an affirmative as opposed to an I don't know. This is what we do. This is why we do it. The rest of the session, we're going to cover how we do it and how we get your answer to a yes. The first thing we're going to do is consolidate your backup silos to reduce the risk across the board. You probably have multiple tools today. We're going to take away complication. We're going to take away the problematic issues with using multiple backup tools across multiple silos and just de-risk the entire infrastructure. And of course, we can cover your critical applications, your on-prem virtual machines, your on-prem applications, your on-prem databases, Active Directory, SQL, NoSQL, and the likes. Of course, we have a wide offering of coverages. But we also help customers with very large unstructured data sources. They're large NAS, they're object storage, on-prem or in the cloud. And when I say large, I mean half a petabyte to a full petabyte and above, where it's nearly impossible to back it up. But we have unique technology that makes that possible. We also help customers who are utilizing M365, whether it be mailboxes, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams, which is an increasing source of data exfiltration because more and more critical data is being stored in these solutions. So specifically, OneDrive and SharePoint becoming more and more targets of data exfiltration and attack. Of course, we also help customers who are in the cloud with cloud-native solutions, whether it be EC2, Azure Native, RDS, SQL as a Service, Kubernetes, or even your lift and shift workloads that you've moved to the cloud. But the key thing here is that we're still standardizing on a single platform. We call it the Rubrik Security Cloud, which is a huge differentiator in itself. Quite frankly, nearly enough to justify the cost of Rubrik alone. Because what we're giving you is a true single pane of glass, we would love to take some time later down the road to show you the platform, because it's not just marketing. This is absolutely real. It really works. Without ever having to leave our interface, you can recover a virtual machine in your data center, an O365 mailbox or OneDrive, an EC2 or RDS instance in the cloud. 99.99% of the time, you will never leave the interface. So the first thing we're going to do is make your life easier with this consolidation. Typically, our customers see anywhere from 80 to 90% reduction in the overhead because now you have one interface to rule them all. But most importantly, though, you still control the data. And more importantly, you still control the data locality, because you just can't put all of the data in the cloud. That'd be a security issue, and then your recovery times would slip. For all the data in your data centers and the remote satellite offices, though, we're going to install Rubrik Data Vaults. It gives you an isolated, immutable copy of your data. So this is replacing your backup and your storage in your vault with a single solution. We'll go into more detail as we move forward. But as soon as you start talking about large unstructured data sets, that's when things can really get crazy. When we start to protect these cloud native assets, we're going to give you an immutable local snapshot. So we're taking over the backup and management plane from the cloud native tools, which means you get a truly single pane of glass with global policy, push it out, centralized MFA, centralized auditing, and centralized role-based access. But in addition to that simplification, you get one thing the cloud native tools cannot do. You get the ability for cross-region and cross-account replication. So the more cloud accounts you have, the more value you're going to get out of this platform, this single pane of glass. And this is the perfect 1-2 punch, quite frankly. Let me advance these slides. I should have been doing this. I didn't know that they didn't auto advance. I do apologize. Like I say, this is the perfect 1-2 punch because you get control of the single pane of glass, but you also get control of the data locality. No other company can do this today. Nobody but Rubrik can give you backup, disaster recovery, cyber resilience from on-prem, cloud, and SaaS with 100% immutability and survivable backups. All right, we're going to go back. We all start with a lot of customers obviously have their critical workloads in their data centers. This is where the Rubrik Data Vault architecture comes in. We give you physical appliances. They can be our Supermicro appliances, which are a white label device, or your own hardware. All major server vendors have pre-certified builds that work with our application. But the key thing is we're giving you appliances that do everything: the backup, the dedupe, the storage, the vault in a single physical appliance. But why physical? Well, when it's physical, we can isolate it. By making it physical, we can give you that physically isolated copy that's separate from the environment that you're protecting, that is survivable from these attacks. What we can tell you today, that if you're running any component of your critical infrastructure, your backup and disaster recovery in a virtual machine, I can guarantee you in the majority of attacks, it's going to be toast. Then you'll have to ask yourself, is the recovery time going to be achievable? We're going to have to start by rebuilding our backup infrastructure. That can take 24 to 48 hours. Are you really going to stake your recovery capabilities on rebuilding your infrastructure from the ground up? With this completely physically isolated, standalone, survivable implementation, you can survive from these attacks. Some of the reason is we also don't use Windows. We use a secure, hardened Linux build that is forked from Ubuntu. It's called Rubric OS. It provides us zero downtime upgrade with rolling upgrade capabilities, because you're only as secure as your last patch, of course, with the ultimate goal of minimizing that attack surface. One more. All right. The next thing is we need to know we can scale. And we do. All you need to do is add more appliances, and you can go from multi-terabyte to multi-petabyte in moments, all in a masterless, fault-tolerant, self-healing system that is massively parallelized. What that means is the larger the Rubric cluster is, the more throughput lanes and storage it has, the more capacity it has to ingest more data and restore more data at the same time. Compared to a big monolithic architecture like traditional big data domains with a small brain, big body mentality, these large systems blows that out of the water. It's like having hundreds of smaller data domains. So the scale out architecture is very important if you intend to hit your recovery time objectives. Now these attacks can be recoverable in hours instead of days. All right. Of course, encrypted is table stakes in this day and age. We know that everybody, all the major vendors out there, we have been encrypted utilizing FIPS 140-2 from the get-go. You can bring your own keys. We've got a key management system that allows you to take control. Now here comes an interesting part, the air gap. How do you make sure you're air gapping the data and protecting it? Rubric has a built-in air gap. Yes, it's physically connected to the network. We have to be to meet the RTO requirements. But no, you can't access the underlying operating system, the operating shell, the storage, the file system, anything. There's no NFS, no SMB at all. It's all encrypted via remote procedure calls on the back end. So the attackers can never compromise the data. They may be able to compromise the servers in your environments protecting, but they can never compromise or access the Rubric storage or file system. And quite frankly, even if they could, it's natively immutable. It's an append-only file system, so 100% of your data cannot be modified or encrypted. And we have well over 5,000 customers now, and every single one of them has natively immutable snapshots without ever having to lift a finger. Secured. We still have an interface on the network, so we have to make sure it's secure. And we do. We protect that with multi-factor authentication. That's absolutely mandatory. We have the ability to have local users with time-based one-time use passwords that you can enroll via easy QR code. So if your LDAP is down after an attack, you can still recover in a break the glass mentality. If you layer on retention lock on our network time protocol protection, you know that you have got protections to ensure that your data will not be prematurely expired. So one last thing I really want to point out, that is a huge differentiator. All of these things together in itself, nobody else has this. They're either trying to be a jack of all trades, trying to be your NAS, your object storage, which has a huge performance implication, or they're running on hypervisors that just don't give you the horsepower and throughput and scalability that you're going to need. One last huge differentiator, Rubrik has built-in scanners, and we are the only solution in the world with these built-in scanners. Without any third-party software, no virtual machines, no additional hardware. It's built right into the platform. So we're going to scan that first copy of your data, and we're going to leverage the scale-out performance of every single node and every compute in the cluster itself to give you the fastest reduction in recovery point and your recovery time objectives humanly possible. So as soon as you start using anything external to the data vault, that's where things start to struggle to scale. It might not even survive the attack. In fact, these threat actors focus on these applications as an attack vector. And if it doesn't use all of the nodes and all of the compute in the cluster, it's never going to scale out. It's just not going to meet your recovery time objectives. It's going to take days to complete, and the clock is ticking, and the cost is more downtime. So what we've seen from working with over 150 ransomware recoveries to date is our customers 100% recovery. These are the security controls you need yesterday to ensure you have a reasonable chance of even making a recovery within hours as opposed to days. And I'll tell you this, if you have a major ransomware attack, if you don't have these features, there's no way on earth that you're going to be able to recover within 24 hours. It will likely take 24 hours to rebuild core infrastructure so you can even begin your recovery. Rubrik is the only vendor who provides these critical features. All right, so you have immutable backups. Why would you need Rubrik? Why does backup not equal cyber resilience? Well, first off, we know this, the attacker gets access. The median dwell time right now, 5 days, according to Mandiant. Dwell time meaning from the time they get into your network to the time they're detected. They get this access and they immediately start to exfiltrate data. They can then move on to their next part of their attack, which is the encryption component. This encryption is fast and dirty. In fact, they can encrypt your entire infrastructure in less than 5 hours. One thing that's really important, without the capability to understand what was encrypted, when it was encrypted at both the guest in the VM level and at the hypervisor level, you have zero visibility into this. And if any of your components of your critical backup and recovery are running on hypervisor, it's going to be gone, because right now 60% of all ransomware attacks are focused at the hypervisor level. Yes, you can rebuild it. How long will that take? Because the clock is ticking. The business is impacted, the costs are increasing, so you're going to spend hours and days potentially rebuilding that. Just so you can get to the first question, which is, can I even recover? Is your backup and your backup infrastructure 100% immutable? And when I'm talking about backups being immutable, that's critical. But think about your backup infrastructure, all of the hardware that services the functionality. If it's running on virtual, then it's going to be toast during these attacks. We've seen it again and again. It's going to happen every single time in these ransomware attacks. The next question is, how do you know what to recover? Obviously, we know one thing. Your EDR failed. It was bypassed. They shut it off. So how do you know what data was encrypted? Without this core visibility, you may be recovering workloads that aren't necessary. You need to be able to focus on what matters first. You need this type of visibility. How do you know what was stolen? How do you know if there was sensitive data inside your workloads? We have to assume this. Every current ransomware attack incorporates not just an encryption event, but also a data exfiltration event. We have to assume if a bad actor has visibility to it, they've actually exfiltrated it. And I'll tell you, DLP is zero good in a ransomware attack. These threat actors have encrypted channels. They siphon the data out. It never goes through your DLP system. So they will get your data guaranteed every single time. When to recover. How do you know what a clean recovery point looks like? How quickly can you determine what clean looks like? Historically, this is where the recoveries fall down. You're oftentimes recovering into an isolated environment so you can scan it, assess it, make sure it's clean. And if it's not, you have to tear it down and iterate back one snapshot and try again. Rinse, lather, repeat. You're probably seeing the problem here. It's slow. It's error prone. With our functionality, we can avoid this. Also, how long is it going to take you to recover? Do you have any automation? Do you have any ability to plan for these attacks in advance? Build recovery plans so you can stand up your critical assets quickly and easily in an iterative fashion. Without, how long is it going to take? How are you going to plan for it? How are you going to prove your readiness? And more importantly, how are you going to show attestation about your ability to recover? All critical things to think about. When you have the answers to these questions, this is true cyber resilience. This is where we're trying to get our customers to a point where they can sleep at night and say that they're cyber resilient. So why Rubrik for cyber resilience? First off, all of our backups are 100% immutable, physically isolated with built-in scanners that scale. We can scan your data quickly, easily, with scale. Secondly, we have built-in encryption detection with a dual machine learning model. We take one sweep looking for change. When we see change, we then take a second sweep looking for degrees of randomness or entropy. We don't miss encryption events. We see them every single time. We're going to give you early alert to these incidents so that you can begin your recovery process. Also, sensitive data discovery. We've got it built in. We scan your backups forever. We're looking for sensitive data with all of our 60 built-in analyzers, so we already know what data to look for. We find it. We tell you where it's at. So you can do two things: proactively mitigate that data, and then, unfortunately, reactive to an attack, understand what your exfiltration exposure was. Without this, you could be in a very difficult situation and having to do breach notification to everyone in your database. With our solution, we can tell you exactly what was in scope in the attack. Threat hunting. We have the ability to do threat hunting in our platform. We can search for indicators of compromise utilizing YAR rules, hashes, and direct file listing, so we can identify malware in your backups and take it to the next level. Not only can we tell if the malware is there, we can tell how long it's been there. Then we can take action on it. We can quarantine it so that known bad binaries are no longer recovery eligible. This is a game changer for our customers. Every single ransomware recovery operation we've conducted takes advantage of this feature. And then finally, cyber recovery. We don't just tell you what's changed and give you a list of files and servers that are in trouble, but we give you an automated workflow. This automated workflow is something that is very important. Obviously, we automatically select non-quarantine and non-anomalous snapshots for you so you can recover either into production or an isolated environment so you can test. Then you can show your leadership that not only you were able to recover, but prove how fast it can be recovered. These are the things that are changing the game for our customers. But one last thing, we don't just leave you with the technology. We give you access to the team and the expertise that's necessary to be able to recover. Every single one of our customers under contract has access to the Rubrik ransomware response team at no additional charge. This is a team of engineers that have done over 150 ransomware recoveries today. They are your best ally for recovering from a ransomware event. So if you are a Rubrik customer, you experience a cyber event, the first thing you're going to want to do is contact the Rubrik ransomware response team. They will spin up a bridge and stay with you until you no longer need them. So this is a huge differentiator, because I'm going to tell you one thing as well. Attackers don't wait for budgets. So we need to really understand that all of the features that we have talked about here today are of critical priority to businesses, because without this level of feature and functionality, our concern is ransomware attacks obviously are only increasing. And if you do get hit, we'd hate to see that your recovery times be measured in weeks to months instead of hours to days, like Rubrik customers. So that being said, don't back up, go forward. Thank you for your time.
Great presentation, Rich. I really enjoyed that. I know the audience did as well. We got a lot of great questions coming in. If you have a question out there in the audience for Rich and the Rubrik team, now is the time to ask, because we're kicking off our Q&A session here. And while we take your questions, I've just brought up a poll for everyone out there. We want to get your feedback on this poll. It says, what additional information would you like about the Rubrik solution? Maybe you'd like some additional technical details. Maybe you'd like to learn about other customers in your vertical. Maybe you'd like some pricing, or just like to try it out for yourself, or see a demo and get all your questions answered. We'll leave that poll up there. And let's kick off some Q&A. I'll just start with this question, Rich. They're asking, what if I have multiple security tools in place? Do I really need more security capabilities?
That is a fantastic question, and one we get asked frequently here at Rubrik. During a cyber event, one thing we're seeing repeatedly is that these security tools are being disabled. So EDR, XDR, IPSs, firewalls, VPN clients, these threat actors are very smart. They're disabling the services. So that being said, I'm not an advocate of removing security tools. I'm a huge advocate of security tools, but when they are circumvented, your last line of defense is your enterprise disaster recovery system, your backup and disaster recovery system. And you better make sure that it's available to you. As I pointed out in my presentation, you better make sure your platform is there and available for you.
Absolutely. Another one here, they want to know, we have XDR and EDR in our environment. Won't that prevent ransomware?
Well, in theory, it should, but quite frankly, in reality, it's not. Every single one of our customers that get hit by ransomware has XDR in their environment. As I said before, these threat actors are extremely good at disabling it. In fact, if you look at some of the telemetry from some of their scripts, they look for the big names in the technologies. So they are very adept and very aware what to disable. Microsoft Defender, they turn off CrowdStrike, they turn off a lot of systems. So in my humble opinion, you need more. You need to have good XDR, good visibility, ship your logs to a off-node host so you can go back and replay them. But make sure, once again, you've got a rock-solid enterprise data protection disaster recovery platform, immutable and isolated.
Excellent. Great advice. And what about, there's a question here about our DLP solution. Can that prevent data exfiltration?
Well, it can. It's really good at preventing an employee from sending out a spreadsheet they shouldn't via the email. But what it's not good at is protecting against mass exfiltration of data from a ransomware attack. Keep in mind, these threat actors have encrypted tunnels back to their command and control infrastructure. I've seen firsthand that they actually have software they have developed to tunnel through pinholes in your firewall with an encrypted tunnel to exfiltrate your data. So quite frankly, it's not going to even go through your DLP solution. They're going to siphon it straight out to their command and control. So DLP is great for day-to-day use. It doesn't do much good during a cyber event.
Got it. This person's asking, isn't having an immutable copy of your data good enough to recover from a ransomware attack?
It's a good first start. Having immutability and isolation of your backup is absolutely a good starting point. But as I pointed out in my in my presentation, observability and visibility and capabilities are just as important. Meaning, if I don't know what to recover, from what point to recover, my immutable backups don't do me much good. It's going to be recover and pray, rinse, lather, repeat. With Rubrik, We can do a threat hunt. We understand what clean looks like. We know what date clean is. We recover once. No do-overs. No reinfection. No data that's still encrypted. So immutable backups, absolutely critical. But telemetry, observability, capabilities, just as important.
Excellent advice. Let's see. There's 15 more questions here still in the queue, but I'm afraid we're running out of time here in our live event. Maybe you can get back to some of these folks after, because I think there's some really great questions in here. Thank you, everyone, for all the excellent questions. If you haven't answered the...
Sorry, I was going to say, I'm going to do my best to answer, but if I don't get to it, I apologize, but you can definitely feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll do my best to take it offline if necessary.
Absolutely. And thank you to everyone who's answered the poll. If you haven't answered the poll, we encourage you to do that now. I want to give a big special thank you to Rich Eicher for presenting on the event today. Great presentation, Rich. Thanks for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And of course, thank you to Rubrik for supporting the event today. Don't forget, there's a handout right there in your handouts tab right at the top. Number one, next to Rubrik, and it is a white paper entitled The Trusted Data Security Solution for Cyber Security or Cyber Recovery. So make sure that you download that resource. It's a PDF, and you can read it after the event and get additional details on the topic that we covered today. And with that, it's now time for our Amazon gift card announcement. We've got 3 Amazon $300 gift cards. These are going out to Dan Frazier from Michigan, Kent Brooks from Wyoming, and Lou Webb from California. Congratulations to our prize winners. If you are watching this event and you're a potential sponsor of an upcoming MegaCast or EcoCast event, reach out to us over at actualtechmedia.com. We're at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And for everyone out there in the audience, I hope that you'll join us on our next MegaCast. This is happening Thursday. Oh, it looks like it's a little bit out of date there. That slide's out of date. But look in your email inbox for other upcoming MegaCast and EcoCast events. We hope to see you next time. Thank you to everyone who joined us on the EcoCast today on supercharging, optimizing, and managing an on-premises data center. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.